That before. I don't know if I liked it. Hey, hey, it's Friday, but it rhymes. Happy Friday to you. It is time for Friday Live question of the week. As usual, I love seeing so many people in the chat. A lot of the usual suspects. So this is a great time for some of the people who I love seeing every week. This is turning into a thing. I would say I'm going to miss it when it stops, but I have no plans of stopping. So it's great. Friday afternoon. I do have a wedding rehearsal to drive to today, and will next week, and will the week after that. But this is okay. It's 1 p.m. Atlantic. The reason why I do this is to accommodate the people like Mark who are 9 a.m. Pacific and everybody else in between. If you're in the Eastern time, you're doing your lunch break or something like that, you can squeak in a watch here. So great to see you. Today, I want to talk about that question that I get asked all the time. What questions do I need to ask my couple in order to write their wedding ceremony love story? The problem is, there are a lot of officiants and celebrants who ask a lot of questions. That creates two sets of problems. The couple feels overwhelmed. And then if they do all that work and get you their answers, then you have a whole slew of stuff to wade through. That was my early experience. I don't want to say I dreaded writing weddings, like 8 years ago, but it was a lot of work sitting down, cracking the knuckles, and deciding what to use and what not to use. Now, that's a challenge. Even when you narrow down your questions, it's still a challenge to write the story. Although, of course, those of you who are in Unboring Wedding Academy know the love story caster is to the rescue. That's Caster TER. There is a lot of fun hijinks and shenanigans going on in the Facebook group of members who are spelling it with an O. And we've created a beaver mascot because, of course, castor in French or Spanish means beaver. So the love story beaver. It's something that I could not have hoped to happen, but it's happening. And you guys are just such a hoot in the membership, and I absolutely love it. So I just want to say hi to people who are joining live, members and non-members, because this is wide open to everybody. We had our members only monthly live office hours last Tuesday. But so many of you here. Cantor Marcus here from Thousand Oaks. We got Larry here from Marietta, Georgia. That's awesome. Sabrina's here, and I know you are a member, so good to see you. And Sabra here. Hi, Mark and Mark. My name is spelled with a K. Mark's is with a C. But that's the only difference, I think. Other than that, we're pretty much the same. Am I right, Cantor Mark? Ingrid is here. Weddings by Ingrid in Arizona. That's awesome. Eric from New York. Amanda from Seattle. New York in the house. Samantha, yes, absolutely. There is some heavy representation from New York. You are competing with Ontario, I see. So good luck to you. Dimples is here. Dimples, a.k.a. Tamara, a.k.a. Dimples. Good to see you. And in Loves Park, Illinois. Mazel tov to you, Cantor Mark. What time does this begin? Diane says. I feel like we have begun. It is 1:03 my time, and something hour your time. Mark says Beaver Cleaver reduces time. Good. hopefully nobody ends up with beaver fever from the Love Story Caster, which is different. It's designed to save you time, not give you any illnesses or anything. Aaron's coming in hot with a question. Does my speech or love story need to be directed to the couple or to the crowd? That is one of the best questions I could get. It will send me on an absolute tangential rabbit hole. But I am going to just answer your question before we start. Apologies to those of you who are like, Mark, just get to the good stuff, but I can't resist this. Aaron, such a great question. Most weddings you go to, the guest, as a guest, you do not feel involved. You do not feel like a participant. You feel like you're watching something up there. One of the big secrets that I landed on years ago when I teach is you give those opening remarks, you come out and you speak to the guests. Hello, everybody. Are you excited? Turn off your phones. uh, that kind of thing. Please do not, you're talking to them, do not take pictures, or you may take pictures, whatever it is. Then the processional happens. Do you know where this is going, Aaron? You can probably guess. I love your question. I love that you asked. It shows that you're thinking about it. I tell this to my coaching clients because some of them don't put it together when they just grab my quick help package. This is the secret to an amazing experience for a wedding guest, is when you continue to talk to them for like 80% of the wedding ceremony. So, we're going to talk about what questions to ask, but when you are telling that love story, it is about the couple. So them, they do this, they meet, and you are telling the guests. That draws them in, makes them feel involved. Anybody who's taken my training or is a guest at my wedding says, that was probably the best. That was the best ceremony I've ever been to. And why? Well, sure, the content of the story is a huge part of it, but the fact that they felt involved, where maybe they've been to 100 wedding ceremonies in their lifetime and never got talked to, except maybe that part where the officiant looks out and says, "Hey, all of you, wake up. The couple just made vows. Do you also agree to support them?" Yes. And then that's it. That's the only time they get talked to in the whole ceremony. So the way that we flip that is, we might talk to the couple, of course, when it's time for them to do their vows, when you want to maybe roll out of your speech, your story, and say, "You're here today to give your lives to each other," declaration of intent. But man, up until that point, you are acknowledging the fact that there are 20 or 220 people sitting in chairs watching. That is crucial. And the couple feels that electricity. Aaron, that's the answer. It only took me a few minutes to answer. It's one of my favorite questions. You hit on some magic there. Well done. So I want to start with answering the questions. So much going on in the chat. Over 50 people live at this point. I absolutely love it. So keep that going, because last week I signed off early and then I saw these questions I'd missed. I'm so sorry. I do try to keep this tight to about half an hour. I don't want it to be onerous for you. If you're popping in, I want you to feel like you can pop in, get the stuff in about 20 minutes that I'm here to say, that you're here to hear. And then, there's shenanigans, which is awesome. But I do want to answer questions within a reasonable amount of time. So, okay. So I'm just scrolling in the chat. Mark is saying I'm spelling my name wrong. Typical. Diana's here. Hi. Suzanne is here from the UK. It's noon in Boston, says April. I will be heading to Boston a few weeks from now to catch a plane to Vegas. So I love Boston, is always like the gateway to like a flight to somewhere awesome. And of course, I try to grab a Boston cream donut while I'm there, because nobody makes a Boston cream donut like Boston. So, hey, April. Yeah, Sabre says, I love this question. Me too. That's why I got all electric there, electrified. Greetings from Canada's capital. Hey, Christine, you're from Ottawa, which is my hometown. Spent 25 years there before I jumped on a plane and went to teach English in Korea. Yeah, love Ottawa. Just if you've been on a live before, can't stand the climate. That's all. Love the city. Family there, beautiful. Grew up there in Canada, Stittsville. But I can't do minus 40 and then plus 40 centigrade in the winters and the summer. An 80-degree swing. Once I lived in other places, I just said, why would I do this anymore? So, man, I wish the climate were better in Ottawa, because what an awesome city. Aaron, you're doing this for the first time on Saturday. That's absolutely awesome. Do you mean tomorrow? If you mean tomorrow, well, all the best. You have the next 24 hours to hopefully glean something from this if you haven't already. Jason says, no question. Just want to thank you for everything you do. Hey, man, thanks a lot, Jason. Love to see you. You're kind of a big deal. I've been following you on Instagram. And so everybody watch Jason's show and what he's up to. Pretty cool stuff. I will try to stay rad. Same back to you. Okay, what 3 questions? Like I say, years ago, and when I started working for a company, they gave me a questionnaire and I was brand new. I knew I wanted to do unboring weddings. And this is where when I worked for this company, they called me, kind of cold called me like 8 years ago. And we're like, hey, you want to do weddings? And I was like, no, No, I don't. I had been a minister and did weddings as part of the job. But I said that, like, who wants that extra work for almost no pay? And frankly, I don't like putting guests through a wedding ceremony. Who wants to inflict that on a bunch of unfortunate souls who happen to love the people who are getting married and have to go through the ritual, etc. And that's when the company said, "Oh no, what if you tell the couple's story?" And then I thought, well, that's a great, I had never seen it. I'd never thought of it. And they said, well, that's what we do. So again, I kind of cut my teeth in that company trying to come up with and sending them loads of questions and asking them, what do you think are relevant parts of your story? And kind of hoping, never knowing quite sure what they would send and then what I would think is relevant. Sometimes it was good stuff, sometimes it wasn't. And as I did dozens of weddings like that, I realized a theme. When I was telling the stories that happened to have those awkward first moments when they saw each other, that happened to have, so here you go, you're going to get the three questions, that happened to have that first date, like where they're sitting together, not sure. This was before Tinder and stuff like that, before the apps that were actually for marrying people or creating relationships. I noticed that when I would tell, when they're at a date at a restaurant, sussing each other out, and it's awkward but hilarious, but then it ends with that moment of, do I kiss you or not? Everyone kind of in their seats leaned in a little bit closer. Uh, and yes, to Aaron's question, I used to tell this story like to the couple. So you did this, you did that. But then I kind of broke away. It was an evolution of, okay, wait, when I'm hitting on these moments about the people standing here, and then the proposal, which it's crazy because we know how the story ends, but we don't know how it happened. Like they're standing in front of you getting married. So there is that magical element of just wanting to hear how it happened, even though you know the ending. And I realized that, okay, wait a second. These three moments, and not every story had all three, were the most engaged that people were. People were so excited. The emotional reactions were bigger. I found myself looking forward to those moments of the story more than just like, well, we went on a trip and we started to like each other that way, or we moved in together. That was a real landmark when we moved in, and that was kind of that awkward move in stage. And they'd sell some funny anecdotes about, I don't know, toothbrushes in the same bathroom or something. There was nothing like the three questions. So I started to say, okay, wait, I'm only going to ask the three questions. I threw out the other questionnaire entirely and said, I am just going to ask the couple three questions and I made a Google form, which I now share with everybody inside Unboring Wedding Academy. Just send your couple the three questions of that panel. I want to zoom back out here to 2,500 years ago. That's right, I said it. Aristotle in his Poetics said a whole story well told has a beginning, a middle, and an ending. And that set the trajectory of human storytelling, like just ricocheted on this path of, oh yeah, a good story has a beginning, a middle, and an ending. Did you catch those three parts? Now, there have been some wavering. I'm not going to say for 2,500 years humanity has never deviated. There have been. But in 1979, for example, Sid Field, a screenwriter, he came out with this screenwriting Bible that said, for movies, for television, we need to get back to, not that we ever completely left it, but the three-act story. There's nothing like the three-act story. And he laid it out for, studying screenwriters. And that's why I would say in our day and age, we are wired for the three-act TV episode, the three-act movie, the three-act movie trilogy, Star Wars or Lord of the Rings or whatever it is. The three-act story is like getting baked into our expectations, and we lean in. Humans have always loved story, but there's something about what Aristotle said years ago. Act one is the setup. So think about how this perfectly fits a love story. Act one is the setup. Act two is the confrontation. So again, there should be an epic story, like Star Wars, Return of the Empire Strikes Back. The Act Two goes really dark, perhaps, and in this case, in this case of a love story, the confrontation is not, things get really dark. We don't go into the couple's breakup period or Ross and Rachel, we were on a break, to make a dated reference of Friends. But what that second act does is talk about like kind of the will they, won't they. You're kind of, your palms are sweating if you're telling the story along with everybody else. You're just kind of like, how did it go? How did that date go? And you're using the details, using present tense, things like that. You're feeling the electricity in the air. And then the third act of a 3-act story is, of course, the resolution. So you have your setup, your confrontation, and then the resolution. And then you need to just get off. Nobody wants a movie or a TV show where the resolution happens and then there's 20 more minutes of seeing the characters out. It's just like fade to white or fade to black. And that's why I get out of every story with, and he said yes, or and she said yes. So the story ends with the proposal, and she said yes, or he said yes, and here we are today, and everybody claps and cheers. I just get us out of there. So that is it, friends. I would say write a 3-act story. For the record, those questions that I recommend asking are, here we go, Act 1. And I put Act 1. I want the couple to see, I'm going to write your story in 3 acts. I know lots of stuff happened. I know you went on great trips, and maybe there's a lot of drama, and maybe you had some kids, and you got some pets, and you toured, you backpacked around Europe, and you climbed Everest together. All kinds of awesome stuff happened. And there's no way we can tell it all, because about 10 minutes in terms of a wedding officiant monologue speech, 10 minutes should be the most, and it should be all about the couple. But think about that, 3 minutes per act or so is about the most you should be doing. So if you ask for more, you're really either stretching the limits of people's attention span, or you're just skimming the surface and not telling the story deeply enough so that we can feel the nerves of two people getting to know each other, getting to like each other, the risk involved in that of falling and wondering if the other person's on the same page as you and stuff. So Act 1, back to what I was saying, Act 1. Tell me about what were your first impressions of each other, and how did you meet? So a lot of time they'll see each other. Now it's on a dating profile or at a party. The wedding I'm telling this weekend, of course, it was in Res at University of New Brunswick. They see each other. The friends set them up. And then, so that's the first thing. I want to know about you noticed each other. What did you think? She thought he was a bit awkward, but he certainly was handsome. Those baby blues were knocking her off her feet, that kind of thing. That's the kind of thing you want to tell. The second act, of course, then is that confrontation. They're out. They agree somehow to go and sit alone together. And I tell couples, well, we've known each other since childhood. Yeah, but there was that night, wasn't there? There was that weird moment at the carnival where you look at each other and you go, is this happening? Are we something more than friends? That's the moment. That's what I want to prime, because it's so pivotal in the story. It's this hinge moment. And then the third thing, so I asked them, tell me about the first date or dates, and how did it go, and how did you feel? Again, you're like, well, it's more than 3 questions. No, it's not. I just kind of use it as a primer. How did the first date go? Okay, so rounding up again. Setup, how did you meet and what were your first impressions? Second, how did the first date go? Or dates. Again, some say, well, it's, the guy will say, one guy will say, it's when we went Dutch and we're, totally drunk at 3 a.m. at McDonald's. And his fiance will say, no, it's when we, it's when he took me out to a proper restaurant, something like that. And then the third thing is, tell me about the proposal. Absolutely key, because man, again, before I was even telling the proposal story, because it didn't make it in when couples were self-selecting the significant moments in their relationship, the proposal story is such a beautiful gong show a lot of the time. One is trying to surprise the other, has to scrap the plans when somebody gets sick or they're about to get found out, or they're trying to surprise them and they get whiff of the plan, so they try to throw them off. And there's always that capture the breath moment when somebody takes one knee or has the ring with them and asks, and the other person says yes. total. That's the moment you can feel it in the room, that like all the tension, I say, leaves the story. And it's crazy because everybody knows how we got. They know that they're getting married. They know how it ends. So Aaron's question of how do you tell it? Again, you tell it to the guests about the couple. There's this uniquely voyeuristic dynamic to that makes the Unboring Wedding style and system absolutely foolproof. You're talking to the guests, you're telling them a story, an incredible story, and the two people you're talking about happen to be standing there listening to it along with everybody else for the first time. No, I do not show the couple the story. They see everything else. I send them their whole script ahead of time to sign off on, but not the story. And then the second thing is, of course, like I say, there's that voyeuristic aspect, um, and you are talking to them uh, about the two people standing there today, and you're involving the guests. Like they feel like, oh my gosh, we are a part of this ceremony. And that's why they leave totally gobsmacked at the experience they just had, and they can't even really put their finger on it. So I want to show you, I do want to go into the chat, and I will have some time because I will have 3 minutes of downtime. I want to share with you my screen. I've just created the love story caster. That's a bit meta. I'm going to show you the 3 questions in action. So you should be seeing my screen now. This is a real example of a wedding I officiated, and I have this whole example in Unboring Wedding Academy where I write the story and teach all the best practices, kind of my 8-point filter of how to tell a story that's outside of the purview of today's conversation. But I want to show you, this is this survey that I send every couple. They type their names in, and you'll see Act 1, first impressions. When and how did you meet? And what was your first impression of your fiance? Act 2, how did the first date happen? Who asked who? What'd you do? What surprises were there? Again, I'm just trying to like prime them. I want a bit more than just, no answer, bullet points or that kind of thing. And then 3, the proposal. What happened leading up to the proposal? How did you feel? How did you plan it? Where did it happen? Who said what? Okay, so again, priming. But you'll see here how Jasmine and Chris both inputted their answers. If you're familiar with Google Forms, you will see that you can toggle through these in different ways. There's the summary where you get Jasmine and Chris and both of their answers. So it'll be Jasmine's on top, Chris is on the bottom for all 3. You can also separate them by question. So here, one response, then you can toggle through. First impression, okay, there is one response, one response. I don't like that view. It's not very good in terms of gathering up the material. Individual, that works. So you Jasmine, 1, 2, 3, and then I ask them what they love about each other, not story related. But then you have Chris, and you have his 1, 2, 3. So you can gather the information as in whichever style you want. I always teach, take those answers, put them on one document, and start writing. However, we just created the Love Story Caster, beta tested it with about 100 members early in September. Just this past week, released it to all over 1,000 members of Unboring Wedding Academy. It is sitting in the course. It is a story writing generator, the caster, not with an O, because that would be beaver, even though a lot of people are calling it the love story beaver. I want to show you what that looks like. So what you do now with this new incredible tool that we've created that I use for every wedding, okay? Just our secret, just those of us who are just live on the internet, top secret right now. Nobody needs to know about this but us. You take the answers of the 3 acts from each person, paste them into the Love Story Caster, hit a button, wait 3 minutes, and it will send you a fully generated love story in 3 acts, a 3-act story that you can just use. You can tweak it a little bit, of course, if you want. But this is, of course, saving me and members hours of work because I've created this, crafted this recipe. So it's down to earth, it's fun, it's an everyday language. And so I want to show you what that looks like. Now, what you would do and what members are doing in Unboring Wedding Academy is you're taking the first act, Act 1 of each person. So here we have, I'm going to toggle back through question here. Summary. I like to do summary. So Jasmine is on the top. So we'll go into the Love Story Caster. This is what it looks like. I did paste ahead of time just so to save us trouble. So This is what it looks like. Ready to storycast, paste the survey answers. You'll see how it's laid out. Person one's name, and then act one, act two, act three. Person two's name, act one, act two, act three. All you have to do is take the answers from the survey, because that's why I teach 3 acts. If you try to put other stuff in there, it's going to be wonky. Okay, this is the system, the style and the system that I've created. It's absolutely foolproof. If it's your first time, you just take the answers, paste them in. So you see here, Jasmine, I'll just read Act One for you. We met 6 years ago at the golf course. I worked at the bar. He loves golf. We talked about hooking our 2 friends up, which it never went far for them, but worked out pretty well for us. My first impression was how much of a gentleman he was. Everyone I talked to about him had such a high opinion of him, and the looks didn't hurt either. That's Jasmine's answers about first impressions and how they met. Now, Chris's answer. I think we first officially met at the golf course where Jasmine was working for the summer. We kind of knew of each other before this, but we really don't ever talk or anything at that point, up to that point. I golf a lot, so I started seeing Jasmine a lot. She worked mostly behind the bar, but also was out on the beer cart a bit. She was the nicest person I think I'd ever met. Everyone loved her. They used to have a sandwich wrap station at the bar, and she made delicious wraps. True to this day, it was an easy way to get to talk to her one-on-one, as I could chat with her while she made my wrap. At this time, I never thought I'd get a chance to get to know her better, but I sure wanted to. That was their answers to the Act One, how they met and their first impressions of each other. So those, and there's the other 2 acts follow, but for the sake of time, I won't go through those. But you see how I pasted that here. We met 6 years ago. That's Jasmine's. Then I put Jasmine 2 in Act 3. Then Chris, what I read for you, I think we first met at the golf course, etc., etc. Now, I'm going to show you my inbox here. Does not have, I got a Chamber of Commerce email from, should I delete that right now? I'll archive it or something. So I want you to see, I don't have an email right now at my mark@unboringwedding.com. I am going to hit this button, Storycast now. You see the little wheel spinning, and there will be a message that pops up any second that says, there we go, we're casting it now. The full love story will be delivered to mark@unboringwedding.com in less than 3 minutes. Whatever email you're using to log into this, you can see there's that black band at the top. It's a WordPress login. And so, friends, it's 27 after the hour right now. And let's just kind of like do Jeopardy music, whatever it is. Wait, by 1:30, the story should hit my inbox, and I will show you what it looks like. Okay, so now while we're doing that, I'm going to go back into here. That looks like a hot mess. So I will go back into here and say, hey, what's going on in the chat? What am I missing? I see the comment right at the bottom, which is Mark's favorite programs, because Mark is a full member of Unboring Wedding Academy, the Otter and the Beaver. You know, I never put that together. I'm in good company. I love Otter as well. Okay. Larissa, where do you find the questionnaire? It is in Unboring Wedding Academy. I know you're a member of the course, so it is in course resources. It is in stage 3, where I talk about sending it all. Good. Okay. Somebody says they didn't receive the details. A love story caster. A lot of people, it just went to spam because it was from WordPress. It had links. So there you go. Great question from Gaming Interviewer. How do you transition from first date all the way to the proposal? Love that. That's in my course, but here you go. I'll give this to you free. I say date 1 leads to date 2, and soon Jasmine and Chris are building a life and a future together. Write that down, take it to the bank. I call that my water under the bridge transition statement. I use it in every single wedding. Date 1 leads to date 2, and soon Jasmine and Chris are building a life and a future together. That's actually in the love story caster. So right now it's writing the 3 acts separately, stitching them together, but I put that prompt right in there. So you should see between Act 2 and Act 3, you'll say, that date led to the next. I didn't want to say date 1 because sometimes there might be some stuff wishy-washiness, but that date led to the next, and soon Jasmine and Chris are building a life and a future together. That's a great question, okay? Aaron, how does any of this change for not if you're super close to the couple and all their friends? It doesn't. It doesn't. I talk about this for everybody, whether you're a first-timer, whether you're a pro, whether you're a friend or relative. Go look at my reviews. Just any reviews online, friends who are officiating, you make it all about them. Now, you can end the story with a reflection. So, Aaron, you could say, here's why I love these two so much. But the story part just keep it about them. Don't put a bunch of yourself in there. I was roommates with the groom and we this and we that. I read too many of these stories, not people who take the course, of course, but too many of these stories that where, the bride might come in or the fiance might come in right at the end, but it's mostly about me and Buddy and all the things we did. And then she came on the scene and joined us. That's not the kind of story you want to tell. Let me check as promised. Let me check here. I'm gonna do it in real time here. Go over. I do have an email. Okay, so here it is. Here's the love story. There it is. So it's 1:30, and within 3 minutes, no reply at unboringwedding.com. Here's the love story caster version of your wedding ceremony story. We'll just read Act 1 so you can see what it did. This love story begins on a sunny day on a golf course 6 years ago. Jasmine, with her ever present friendly smile, is dutifully working behind the bar. She's a favorite among the patrons, not only for her charming demeanor, but also for her culinary prowess at the sandwich and wrap station. See, I never know how it's going to turn out, and this is so fun. And people who love this, people who use this tool are saying it's really fun to see what it's going to do. So we're still in Act 1. On this particular day, a frequent golfer named Chris steps up to the bar. He's well known for his love of the game and his gentlemanly manners. Chris, like the rest of the patrons, finds himself drawn to Jasmine's infectious charm. He orders a wrap, and as Jasmine prepares it, they share a lighthearted conversation. Jasmine's struck by Chris's gentlemanly nature and the high regard everyone seems to hold him in. Plus, she can't help but notice his good looks. The pair share a laugh over their mutual friends who they think should make a great couple. They conspire to play matchmaker, setting the stage for their own blossoming relationship. The plan for their friends doesn't pan out, but the spark between Jasmine and Chris is undeniable. Now, Act 2. As summer progresses, Chris finds himself frequenting the golf course often, and not just for the love of the game, but also for the chance to see Jasmine. So that's getting into the Act 2. I wonder if we can find, there it is. There's the line that got asked. And that date leads to the next. And soon, Jasmine and Chris are building a life and a future together. So I love that you asked that question. I could pinpoint for you. It billed the 3 acts separately, but I told this tool in the prompt at the end of Act 2, write that line. Okay, so that's what that looks like. This is what users are using. That's what I created. I created it for myself. It is saving hours of work. I love reading it the first time, and then I decide, will I change anything? Will I tweak? Will I change that word there? You might want to do that to make it your own, but it's super fun. And you can only do that, friends. You can only do that when you have that kind of formula. When you have the 3-act story, this allows members of Unboring Wedding Academy, myself, to write, dozens, hundreds of wedding stories a year, because you're not wondering, yeah, your couple might give you a little less than you would want, or maybe more than you would want, but at least it's confined to those magical 3 questions, so you can write that time-tested 3-act story. So that hopefully answered the question, what questions do I ask my couple to write their wedding ceremony love story? First impressions and what they thought of each other and how they met. First date or dates and proposal. Get them to fill those out separately. Members of the course get the form, of course, that they just fire off and wait for them to answer. And now, of course, you can just input your answers inside the Love Story Caster. But of course, the full course teaches you my 8-point rubric and all that I've been using for years. Okay, I'm scrolling up here. I do not want to sign off here. Amanda's got to get my kids to school. Yeah, there's different time zones happening here. Noreen, I see a question here. How do I handle the love story without making the bride's young children from her first marriage feel bad about their father and mother's language not seeming as important to their mom now? Let me absorb that. How do I handle the love story without making the bride's young children from her first marriage feel bad about their father and mother's marriage? Oh, I see. Well, again, that's why I just stick to, and some people say, okay, the couple met under not great circumstances as one marriage was breaking up in another. Any details like that, you just leave out, kind of act like you don't need to give full context. But sometimes in trickier relationships like this, you just get right to a first date. And in some very extreme cases, I've heard of some officiants just going straight to the proposal and stretching that out. So this is one of those very extenuating cases. Again, I would say uh, the best scenario in this case is just to leave out the context. You don't want to say she's in a terrible marriage and she's at the coffee shop and she'll talk to anybody or that kind of thing. I mean, those are painful realities of how some people get together. Some people get together under extramarital circumstances, that kind of thing. I still think a wedding day has a gloss to it, a sheen to it, that you're not denying things, but you're not bringing up. And I stay clear of any like we broke up for 2 years. I don't say the word break up in a story ever. I say they go their separate ways and find each other once again if it's crucial to the story. So you just want to be mindful of not using any, as you said, make anybody feel bad, make anybody feel embarrassed. So use your judgment around that kind of thing. And of course, if the love story caster put that in, take it out for sure. Elise is here from Maine. Hey, good to talk to you. I know we were emailing back and forth this week. You're a member. I love Mark cheering on Aaron. You got this, Aaron. So I'm just going to scroll down here and see if there's any questions before I head off here. Yes, the juggling pineapples. I gotta say, this has been an unpleasant surprise because I have worked so hard to make the love story caster not deviate, only use the facts. But some people are noticing that if there's almost no information, the love story caster is like, well, I'm going to go for it and put something in there. I don't encourage this kind of use. In fact, I'm talking to the developer about, can we stop this? If you just put names in and no answers, you'll just get a totally fictional, insane story that the program is just like, well, I got to do something here. So, but if you, as I just demonstrated, if you put 3 perfectly good and useful answers in, you should not get anybody juggling pineapples unless they did juggle pineapples. And you get the Love Story Caster by jumping into unboringweddingacademy.com, unboringweddingacademy.com, and that is how you get in. Every member has the Love Story Caster. So what the course looked like before was me for about 2 hours in stage 4 teaching how to write a moving story. That's not going anywhere, but now you can kind of fast track, take a little shortcut around by putting this stuff right in the Love Story Caster. And in the new module for the Love Story Caster in the course, I do talk about, okay, take what this generated, but make sure it's in present tense. Make sure, you've got things they're learning about each other. I have an 8-point rubric for how to make sure that the story is absolutely foolproof perfect. So that's what that looks like. Jazz says, I just did my second wedding. Awesome, Jazz. Congrats. You are on your way. Aaron, another question. Is it a faux pas to mention those who can't be here today during the opening welcome? Absolutely not. In fact, I teach this as well. I think right after the processional, before I get to the love story, I say, and you ask your couple about this. Today is a day of tremendous joy and celebration. And at the same time, we are mindful of, you say the bride's mother died. My goodness. I do have a couple tomorrow who the bride, very close family member, passed away. And she didn't want it mentioned the way that I suggested because she said she'll just come apart. She'll be a wreck. So, of course, there's going to be commemorations around the space, a chair with a picture on it, that kind of thing. But I always say, so it's not a faux pas, but run it by your couple. I think it's important to mention because, hey, life is like this. We are always celebrating and grieving at the same time. We have different levels of awareness of that. Of course, we push some things down and elevate other things, but that's life. That is the human condition. And so I think it's really important when the procession is over, they're standing in front of me. I usually say something like, here they are. They're here today to get married. They're perfect. Can I get a heck yeah? Everybody cheers. And then I would take a breath and say, typically I would just launch into the story. Then how did they get here today and start the story? But Aaron, tomorrow I would say, if I were you, of course, with the couple's permission, today is a day of tremendous joy and celebration. And at the very same time, we are so mindful of Mom, who is not able to be here with us physically, but she is with us in spirit. So I've done it so many times, I can kind of say it off the top of my head. But you look out, people are wiping their eyes. You want to acknowledge that person when their absence is felt more than their presence would be in some ways. It is very important to acknowledge that. And I know a lot of the incredible ninjas here in the chat who do this professionally know that as well. Okay. So let me continue to go down here. Yep, Cantor Mark. He's one of those pros, one of those elites. Good. Karen says, I used the caster for a last minute September wedding. It was a game changer for last minute writing. Saves you hours. Exactly. Some of you are saying you just use it full on, don't change anything. Of course, you want to make sure that you check it for all the details. You want to read the answers before you go with the love story caster. It's 99% great, I would say, and then you might want to tweak some things. But John, you're here. John, my goodness, what time is it where you are? From Australia. Should you limit their answers to, let's say, 100 words? I never limit their answers. I think it's really something to ask a couple to sit down and do this homework. I think of Mark Twain's thing. I didn't have time to write a short article or a short essay. I think it's hard to shorten. I wouldn't want to put that burden on them. I love the context. It takes almost no time to read their answers, and any backstory you have in your head in terms of details, context, it only helps you write it better. So I wouldn't want to do that. John, it is 2:40 a.m. I'm so glad we get to engage this way. I also don't know if I should feel so bad that apparently you don't sleep, or I don't know. Maybe hopefully this is working for you. This schedule. All right. So, like I said, I try to keep this to half an hour. Was super excited to kind of make the world debut of the world exclusive love story caster that is inside Unboring Wedding Academy, that writes the couple's love story for you when you're an officiant or celebrant. I use that now, but the only reason why I could create something like this was because of the 3-act story formula. How did you meet? What were your first impressions? Tell me the first date. Tell me the proposal. They give you those answers. You just plug them in, and then you have that time-tested 3-act story that goes all the way back to Aristotle, beginning, middle, end. People are on the edge of their seats, and I love that Aaron brought it up. Tell the story about the couple, Jasmine and Chris, to their friends and family, and people will be on the edge of their seats, and they won't even realize why. That was the greatest ceremony they've ever seen. Okay, friends, this is last call for any questions. Thanks, Mark and Mark. Look at that, Mark. You got equal mention with me. I am honored to share this space with you, Mark. Any others? And says, can you use the caster without being a member of Unboring Wedding Academy? No, it is inside the course. I mean, this is one of those things where, like, I probably would ask $300 to get access to this thing. And so instead, I just rolled that right into Unboring Wedding Academy membership, because I'm not interested in selling products. I am really interested in the community, all the amazing officiants and celebrants that I get to share this journey with. So if that's the only reason you get Academy and you never talk to us, and that's fine. I won't be too hurt. I will shoot you a personal welcome video to the course, as I do everyone. But I basically, I want people to be able to engage with each other. Like, we're going to Wedding MBA, and we're having a meal together. And anybody who's a member of the Academy, that is what I'm super interested in. So I just wanted to make this tool available to everybody who is leveling up and trying to be the greatest officiant or celebrant in that way. Okay, so that's the answer to that question. Thank you for asking. I really appreciate that. Everybody, thank you so much for joining today. Brittany, you are awesome, and I'm so glad you've learned so much from my channel. I love doing this. Again, I wake up on Friday morning, and I think I get to come on here with 50 some people live. So many of you who I get to share this journey with. I absolutely appreciate it. I will see you next Friday. Wonder what we're going to talk about. Ask me some questions so I can answer another question of the week on Friday Live. And if you're on my email list, I will be sending out an email with this replay, and of course with a link to Unboring Wedding Academy, where you can get the Love Story Caster as part of the membership. All right, everybody, have a wonderful weekend of weddings and any other shenanigans, fall fairs, whatever you're up to. Marry on. Thanks a lot.